Good evening, everyone. It's good to see each and every one of you, and certainly for all of our candidates here. Let's give them a round of applause. My name is Larry Whitley. I'm the pastor here at Mount Moriah. This is our 16th community forum, and we're excited each year as election time that we get the opportunity to have all the candidates here at Mount Moriah first. And so we are just elated to have all of them here and have you here. So on behalf of Mount Moriah, thank you for being here. The ladies' restroom is on my left, and the men's on my right if you need. And all the candidates, you have water beside you there right next to your chair. So thank you again. Our purpose for this meeting is to bring together candidates so we can have an opportunity to look at them, ask them questions, and see in times that we're living in now, the thinking process, and how do they feel in relation to the town of Matthews. But moreover, this is a bridge building relationship. Pastor Chuck and Luke and First Baptist and several other churches that we have come together to talk about race and making sure that we do those things more like what God has called us to love one another. And so we weren't afraid to say black or white or talk about issues of race to make sure we got equality and justice for all. And so that's why we are here tonight, and that's why these candidates are here to tell us their view and how they feel about race quality and things that are happening in the world today. With that being said, I'm going to ask my dear friend if you would come and open us up with prayer.
Thank you, Pastor. I'm Chuck Wilson. I'm one of the pastors in the community that Pastor Whitley was talking about. And as you said, 16, we've just made a decision many years ago that we were just not going to go away when it came to this subject, and that at least twice a year that we were going to make sure that we talked about these kind of issues right here in the middle of our community. So put this on your calendar. Tuesday, February the 20th will be our next one, and it will be on the other side of town. First time that we've gone over to our friends at Morning Star Lutheran Church. All right, so we'll be enjoying wonderful moments over there next time. Would you pray with me, please? Oh God, we give you thanks for this night that we have gathered. We offer thanksgiving about faith, about life, about hope, about purpose, about meaning, about justice in the land. May it be so, oh God, that we are your people that are hammering out justice wherever we might go, especially in these matters around racial justice. Help us to know, oh God, and to build these bridges, as Pastor Whitley has already said, across lines where we're shaping and believing and walking side by side with one another. May that be the order of the day, and may that be our future. For this we pray.
With that being said, I'm excited, delighted, and excited that we are having our community forum, but our moderator is the other, Ms. Tanya arriving. Let's give her a round of applause. This is her 15th community forum. So without any further ado, Ms. Tanya arriving.
All right, thank you so much, Reverend. And I say all the time, and I mean this, I'm so humbled and grateful for the work that these ministries are doing here in Matthews, and we're continuing. I know every opportunity I get to push and bring recognition where it's due, which is the work that they're putting in here. And so before I even start the introduction, let's give them another round of applause, having this conversation in a season of so much division, and they just refuse to give in and keep pushing forward. And so we're grateful for that. Of course, I know you all are here for a purpose, and that's for the Candidates Forum. And for those of you who don't know me, I work radio and television. I'm currently on Praise 100.9, a 24-hour gospel station, Radio 1 Charlotte, and I do freelance, but I was formerly at WBTV and WCCB. And again, I'm just grateful and humbled for this opportunity to come and serve with you all. This Candidates Forum, we know that election season is upon us. Early voting starts on September 21st. So we're going to get started with the recognition or the introduction and the introductions of our panel here. And we will start by allowing them to do an introduction. We ask that you do 60 seconds, 1 minute, please, to introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the questions. But we'll start with the mayor, of course, and give him the honor. So our honorable mayor here of Matthews. Thank you, Mayor. Nice job. I have an order here, but I believe we'll just start right here and work our way down. If you would introduce yourself for now, we've got a questions, particular specific questions for you coming up. So you introduce yourself and what you're running for. Let me do this, and you all tell me, as you're doing your introduction, because you kind of just touched on it, you're telling about yourself and why you're running. Why don't we combine all of that together? So are you comfortable with that just now? Tell us about yourself and why you're running for office. Okay, then we'll wait. I just want to make sure because I don't want to omit anyone. All right. So if you'll just introduce yourself, please. So, for clarity, why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, and tell us about yourself and why you're running for office. And if I need to come back to you to do that, we will. Thank you to all of our candidates. Did you need to go back up and because we allowed, and so when we did our introduction, she did not get to do all that. And thank you for following to the point what I had asked. So I will make note that Jeff Miller is not present. However, I do have a statement from one of the candidates, and his name is Jonathan Clayton, and I've been asked to read this. And it starts by allowing me to introduce myself. I am Jonathan Clayton, and I'm running for the position of Town Commissioner for Matthews. I extend my sincere apologies for my absence tonight. My previous engagement on the planning board alongside Pastor Whitley, who has since become a commissioner, deeply connects me to this event hosted by his church. Unfortunately, circumstances prevent me from being present as my family and I are on a 2-week vacation through the Northeast, a trip that was planned months before my decision to run for commissioner. As a proud North Carolina native and devoted resident of Matthews for almost 3 decades, I'm passionate about growing and protecting our great town. My 4-year tenure on the Matthews Planning Board has allowed me to become deeply engaged with our community's planning and development. My vision for Matthews is to preserve its alluring charm and secure environment while adopting small growth strategies for the future. In order to accomplish this, we must retain our dedicated first responders who have, unfortunately, sought opportunities in neighboring towns. I'm committed to ensuring that these valuable assets to our community are compensated competitively and that the commitment is reflected by a budget that demonstrates our resolve. Another cornerstone of my campaign is my unwavering dedication to the strategic growth of Matthews over special interest. With smart growth and a secure and safe community, we can see Matthews thrive and prosper. I look forward to engaging further with each of you and contributing to Matthews' prosperous future. Thank you for your understanding and consideration. Please reach out to me with any questions to claytonformatthews@gmail.com. Warm regards, Jonathan Clayton. So he made sure that he had a presence here by making you aware that he is still committed. And certainly we know it's vacation season. Now we're going to move along, and I want to first of all say thank you for staying on point with time for most of you. But we have to make sure that we stay within the boundaries because it's only fair that everyone gets a chance, and we've got a large group. And then we get to the good stuff, which is where they get to ask questions. So if you would work with me on that, please, then it just helps us flow through the night. And we're going to go ahead and start with our first question, which is, how has race played a role in your life once, and how have your views on racial issues within the country and state evolved over time? So it's a 2-part question. First, how has race played a role in your life? And then how have your views on racial issues within the country and state evolved over time? So we'll give you 2 minutes each. And since you went first, if it's okay, I'll ask Mr. Tufano if he would start with that. Is that okay? And if you get to a point where you're not sure, like your time, if you kind of peep over here at me, I'll give you an idea, like if you're at 1 minute. All right? Should I repeat the question? All right. How has race played a role in your life? How have your views on racial issues within the country and state evolved over time? 2 minutes.
To go or 2 minutes?
2 minutes.
Oh, okay, okay. As Tanya was telling me, I like to talk. Can you imagine me being pulled over by a police officer? And it happens here in Matthews. Mayor, he was very nice with me. And as soon as I opened my mouth, I realized that I am not from this country. So the conversation went like this. Hi, you know why I've stopped you? No. Driver license and registration, please. Yes. No. Yes. No. For the whole conversation. So, my grandfather escaped from the Soviet Union persecutors from Ukraine to Argentina. My dad escaped from the military junta in 1976 from Argentina to Brazil, and I was following him. Back in the days, we didn't have money, so we took a bus. It took 4 days in a bus. So we were living in a bus for 4 days with 13 luggages. And I asked my mom, why were you bringing my best toys? We're just going on vacation, right? Yeah, don't worry about it. So I had to learn a new language and everything else. And yes, I was segregated a little bit in Brazil, but the U.S. is the only country, and I don't know why, that we have to label people. Time to finish? All right. So, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it. So, I would like to ask everybody to stop labeling people because there's nothing good about it. So, by the end of today, I want to convince you guys to start a movement to stop putting in forms what is your race, because we are increasing the division of races and we don't need that. Thank you. Is Jeff? I'm going to give you my vote. Yes, sir. Thank you. Gracias. Hello?
Sorry I was late. I don't remember the invite, but I got it. Again, my name is Jeff. With me, I know Chuck.
to also answer a question? I apologize for back to back, but if you could cover the second question, because we're going to pick up with the next one. And perhaps that is your question or the response about race and what role it played in your life. If that was your response, that's fine. And then have your views changed within the country, nationally, and on the state level? And you kind of touched on that already, but I wanted to make sure if you wanted to elaborate on it or not. So we're going to start back on this end. And of course, you all know we've got people watching online, which we're grateful for as well. But it's all about being bold enough to have these conversations, or especially around division and racial injustices. So the next question is, a lot of people, and some of you have touched on this already as well, have stated that racial injustices ended with Jim Crow segregation. We know there's been a lot of changes with affirmative action and some decisions that have been made with our Supreme Court. We'd like for you to kind of comment on the racial injustices. Where do you feel like we are with that today? And kind of tie that in to your town here, Matthews, and how it should be addressed. Yes. Oh, Gina, I so apologize, Ms. Hoover. Thank you, Pastor Mabry. I do apologize.
Can you hear me? Okay. How does race play a role in my life? When I was growing up, and even though I grew up here in the South, here in Matthews, my mother and father always taught me you never judge a person by the color of their skin, which goes back to Mr. Threat. Okay. You judge a person by their character, and that is what I taught my son as well growing up. So I have a biracial family, and I am very thankful for that. And my grandchildren are the best grandchildren in the world. You know, they're just, it's amazing. As for the national and state, that's really hard for me to answer because right now, it's really a mess right now. And people up in state capitol and up in Washington need to get their heinies in gear and get some things going. So, but I am thankful that having a biracial family, I am able to talk about racial issues and learn from them to get their point of view on things, and then they can hear, you know, as someone who's white and grew up in the South, can hear how we feel, and it's amazing how we come together. And you know, just as a family, and we learn from each other. So I am thankful for that.
Thank you, Ms. Hoover. And again, I apologize. So back to that question, and we'll start with you, Mr. Urban, about the racial injustices, your opinion. And again, some of you have touched on this. If you feel like that those ended, and kind of why you agree or disagree, and how can you bring that to this town of Matthews and talk about what exists today and how you would address these issues?
It's seriously highly involved. I mean, I don't go to work at town, meet with the mayor and my constituents and think globally about what's happening at the state and the national level. My concern is about the town of Matthews. And then if things aren't working well, I go to Raleigh. And we hope that we yell and scream enough at Raleigh and they go to the federal level. town standpoint, I mean, we have, the human resource officer, we have the diversity, equity, and inclusion person in that human resources area and stuff like that. The town takes it quite seriously. The level of diversity training that came about at Larry's coaxing when he first came on the board, et cetera. So I think the town does a lot of things. I'd just really like to rise above the conversation, raise a little bit, and sort of talk about the diversity aspect of it. I mean, is everybody in this room well aware that right now that it is mostly a female contingent that is running the town of Matthews? That the white stereotype middle-aged male is not town manager. It's our wonderful Becky Hawk, our human resources officer, our CFO, and it goes on and on and on and on. And into the level of the police and fire, we have key personnel that are women, black, Hispanic, et cetera. So I think the town as a whole has made great inroads on the diversification issue and takes it very, very seriously. They also take it very, very seriously that the best person is in the best position. So if you want to take a look at it from a town manager standpoint, here you have a very well-educated young female, and that should tell you something. And it tells you what the goals of this town are in developing a well-rounded community that reflects the community, and that's probably my 2 minutes.
I think it's pretty clear that there are still racial injustices in America today. I'm studying at UNC Chapel Hill right now, getting my master's in public administration, and this past semester I took an introduction to law course, and we were in that class when the SCOTUS ruling was passed down for Harvard and UNC. In that class there were 13 of us. 2 of the students were black and there was a Latina female. And so we took time to reflect on what that ruling meant to the students in the class, sharing space and giving time, especially for the 2 black students and the Latina female to reflect and work through the big emotions that came with that ruling, because there still need to be methods in place to create a level playing field. Bringing it back to Matthews, and I touched on this earlier, there are still methods that need to be in place for us to create level opportunities for people of all races to live in Matthews. There's still a large unbalance of racial disparity here, and we have a lot of work to do. I need to talk more. I mean, I think I really touched on the points that it is obvious there is injustice, and we have to be strategic about what we do moving forward to open the playing field for everybody.
I do agree that there is still a lot of racial injustice in our country and all over the world. And so the first step, I think, to solving it is listening to people who don't look like you, who don't think like you, who don't act like you, opening your mind. And then second, you have to act on that. And so things we've done in the town, problems that we've seen, primarily pointed out by my good friend Larry Whitley, is we only had 1 town employee, an African-American town employee, making more than $80,000 a year. 1. And so Larry sat down with me and we had a conversation. He said, how can this be? And it's because we hadn't been reaching out to all the groups. We hadn't been advertising jobs to where people of color were looking at it and applying. And so we had to make sure we were reaching out to everybody. And so we're able to do that, and we've been able to have better hiring practices in town. And then secondly, I think it's also with training. I think the best way to help people not have fear of the police is make sure that the police are trained, given the resources to train to work through racial bias, racial awareness, because those who are supposed to protect us should protect everybody, and they should have that in their heart and in their soul. And so the way to do that is give the funding so they can get trained, give the funding so they can learn and hear from people who don't look like them. I think we have a long way to go, but I think we're on the right track. Thank you.
I want to address a previous comment, if I could, real quickly. Several years ago, I visited Las Vegas, and I visited the Hoover Dam, and I said, I was at the bottom of the dam, and I said, can I take person that was giving us the tour said, "You can take all the damn pictures you want." So I think that's maybe the only appropriate way to use that word in church, at least. Thank you. I'll be here all night. All right. You know, I think specifically for the town of Matthews, how we can do better. And this again was at some of the prodding of Pastor Whitley. But we wanted to make sure that our police force, our employees reflected the look of the town. And currently about 16% of our employees are minorities, Black, Asian, or Hispanic. And since I've been mayor, our new hires have been over 25% minorities. So I think we're making good inroads there to make sure that our employees look like the community. I don't think we need an all-white police force or an all-white fire or medic team. We want to have people that work for our town look like us. And I think we're making great inroads in doing that. One other comment on a national level or a state or national level. You know, my parents taught me that character is what you do when nobody's looking. And I was looking through the news this morning, and I read the story, and some of you may have saw it, where 5 white police officers went to a house and tortured 2 black men for about 2 days, just beat them to a pulp. We still have an issue. This is still happening in America in 2023. So do we still have a problem? Absolutely. And people, you know, we need to shine a bright light on that. Last thing I'd like to say is our churches have started a ministry where people that look different go out and eat together and talk. And we've spoke many times that Black and Hispanic and Asian people and white people really want the same things. You know, we want a white picket fence. We want 2.7 kids. Was that what you were? 2.7 kids and a dog. So we're very similar, and just get to know people. So I encourage you to go break bread with someone that doesn't look like you, someone that's different. You might find that you have a lot more have different. Thank you.
Have a lot of racial issues in this country. I think it's possibly gotten better, but we still have a long way to go. You know, you listen to the news, and it's just discouraging on what you see and what you hear about this person, like John said, you know, some person getting beat up, or a police officer is overreacting to a particular situation. So I think there's training that can be done in the cities to prevent a lot of this situations. As far as Matthews, I think overall the town does a really good job on keeping things, you know, racially even. Like John had mentioned, there's committees. There's a cultural diversity committee, and you know, they meet on a regular basis. And the information that they gather, the commissioners listen to it. So, I said before, if we just sit back and treat each other with respect, then we're moving in the right direction. Thank you.
Best thing that we have, and everyone has it, in combating racial injustice is being able to communicate, come together, talk together, eat. That's a great way. That'll get me in the door. When I was coaching my kids' engineering team, there's an organization called First Inspires. I believe a team came in and did a presentation at one of the town hall events. They showed off a robot that this high school team built. I was involved with a similar group. The younger kids use Legos, and when we came together and we moved forward, the North Carolina competition was held at North Carolina A&T. There were teams that came from the mountains, from the coast. There were They were small towns, big cities, but they all came to solve the same problems. In between competitions, in between their time on the floor on the competition field, they would get together and the kids would talk about Legos. They would talk about motors. They would talk about how much fun they had, how late they stayed up to work on solving problems. And that's where the lines kind of fell away. They blurred, they faded. The kids were talking to kids. They were seeing each other as not just competitors, but they saw each other as other people. We have to work on ourselves at where we are now, but we also have to help the kids grow into that so they don't have to solve it later. It needs to happen now. It needs to happen continuously.
This subject matter is one that's very dear to me. There's still a lot of work for us to do as a nation, certainly even as North Carolinians and certainly here in Matthews. The problem must be addressed from a number of arenas. In other words, we must ensure that public policy doesn't have biases, that we don't have within our policy here in Matthews government where we're showing bias. But that's really not the problem, because you can see that on paper. The real challenges that we're facing is what's in the hearts of human beings. This thing could not have lived this long, 247 years, and we're still dealing with this. It's because of the hearts. And that's where we who are in ministry and clergy must be dealing with the hearts of people, saying, listen, you know, one of the things I did with my children is that I as a parent, I made sure that growing up, that this was not something that they would carry to the next generation. They may have grew up in an environment of bias, but I made sure that they didn't carry it within their own hearts. Each of us have a responsibility, first of all, to ensure that public policy doesn't have the biases, but also make sure that we do everything we can to make sure these issues of the heart. And so part of my ministry, it's been from day one, comes from that premise of second chapter of Ephesians, where Jesus makes it real clear, Paul makes it real clear, he teaches that Jesus gave us something called the one new man. That we're no longer Jew and Gentile, no longer black and white, but we're all one people in Christ. You know, if we could preach that message regularly, maybe we'll deal with the heart where most of these problems come from.
I can remember an old saying that locks keep people honest. So your house is locked up, that makes sure your neighbor doesn't come in your house and take your Xbox. All right. Today, every police department has cameras. The officers has a camera. This church has cameras in it. Everybody here has cell phones where they can record. And that's kept a lot of people honest. The key here is what's in your heart. And the cameras are not on. What's in your heart? And I think that's the key thing. I do believe very strongly, like what I talked about earlier that I saw in 1980, I believe that line has moved dramatically. But it's not 100%. There are still people that have those views, unfortunately. So I think in some ways the cameras and putting light on the issue and doing things like having churches that meet together and stuff like that go a long distance to that, but I think it's an issue of a man's heart. I do not believe in discrimination at all. I grew up in California. It's a melting pot out there. And so for me, I do think things have changed. We had a president that was African American that got elected a couple years ago. That's the good thing. One of the negatives, we had some kids that came downtown and spray painted on walls, which I won't mention what they were, but the newspaper here locally reported it. So we still got a distance to go. And I think we as elected officials are part of that torch to do things different. Just because it was a certain way for decades is not the way we need to be doing things today. Thank you.
Working? I can. Now it's working? No, it's not. Is it? Well, I can keep talking. Anyway, if I ask a 5 years old, what color is this? And just what color is this? So you're not 5 years old, Pastor, but can you tell me what color is this? Color. White. So white is a color as well, guys. So why we're labeling people saying people of color? Nothing against anything you said again about people of color, but I'm just saying, people of color. What color am I? White, black? So again, it's all about labels, and we need to stop saying labels. So the same thing that Pastor Ian said. Forget about labels. Forget about anything regarding to the color of my skin or anyone's skin, and just think about it, who I am. So when you go back home tonight and you talk about the candidates, please try not to refer me as the guy that speaks funny with an accent, or the guy that has a Ukrainian last name, was born in Argentina, lived in Brazil for all his life, but just try to refer me as the most handsome guy here in the audience, so you can talk about me that way. It's gonna be much better. So no race, no labels. Thank you.
I used to be handsome. In my opinion, our town is a great place to play, pray, and raise a family. We've won a lot of awards through the years. Most of you know I was a commissioner for 14 years, and then I rolled off for 2 to give others a chance. I believe in term limits, etc. Let other people bring their ideas. I feel I cannot change the world from a 3-bedroom home near Mara. I have no control over Georgia, Mississippi, or Washington, D.C. That being said, I support public safety. I support the police. I support fire. I support medic. If you don't go after crime, crime will come after you. It'll find you, okay? What I represent really is leadership, stability, and experience. I've served under 4 mayors, Mayor Myers, Mayor Taylor, Mayor Bailey, and Mayor Higdon, the tallest of all 4. Bottom line is I'm a team player. It doesn't take one person to change the world. It takes a group. And for every vote that we do in town council, it's 4 out of 7. It's not one person changing everything. It's 4 out of 7. It's amazing what a team can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit. Think about that for a minute, okay? Another saying, victory has 1,000 fathers, but defeat is an orphan. Think about that for a minute. Many people will seek credit for their success, but few will accept responsibility for their failures. I will take responsibility for both. As I said, I'm a team player. Jeff Miller.
Okay, I can stand up here and repeat everything everyone has said because, in my view, they all have valid points, and I agree with pretty much what they've all said. So I am going I would like to see, and we'll say here, the town of Matthews has a cultural diversity committee, and I would like to have more updates, monthly updates of what's going on with this committee, to learn more about what's going on, what they are discussing. And I also think it would be nice to have community meetings with, you know, the Crestdale community, with different, you know, with our different areas, to learn their voices, their concerns, and because if we don't hear it, we don't know how to move forward and make decisions. So for me, it's just more community engagement and listening and learning from the citizens in our community.
There's been a lot of discussion tonight about, especially eloquently from Leon and George, about how it is a matter of the heart. And that is exactly what I'm going to talk about as well, because it demands to be spoken of more than once. Since the 60s and all throughout the last 30, 40 years, there's been an incredible cascade of legislation in bodies of power to remove all of this ugliness that we've been experiencing. In corporations, in towns, there's been laws, policies, and procedures, but that's a cerebral solution. I've often heard that the longest distance at all is between the head and the heart. Now, there's one of my favorite passages is in Matthews, where the Pharisees asked Christ what was the most important of all the commandments. And in his typical way, he always answered obtrusely. And he said, the most important commandments are to love your God with all your heart and soul, and to love your fellow man as if you loved yourself. All of the law, all of the commandments, all of the prophets can be lumped into those two. So when we look at a police officer, that police officer sitting in that car, he may be going to church that Sunday, and he may need to be told that this is part of his belief system, is to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So every one of us needs to take into, those of us especially who are Christian, there is absolutely no room in Christianity for prejudice. Absolutely none. So it is a matter of the heart, and we can pass all the laws and rules and procedures that we want to. Thank you very much for your time.
We're coming up on the last question, and we want to get to questions from people who are in attendance. So if you could work with me on this one. Pastor Mabry is the official timekeeper. We'll do 1 minute on this one, and we'll start with you, Ms. Hoover, if that's okay. And the question is, what should be done about, we're going to start with Ms. Gardner. Ms. Hoover, I've tried to make sure I keep you involved, Ms. Gardner. We want to make sure you all answer, what should be done about the fact that many people who live in Matthews, they can't afford to live here, and what priority should housing have with the city? And once we run through this question with each person, 1 minute, please, then we'll start taking some questions from our guests.
I don't know that anybody that's sitting on the board right now can address housing in 1 minute, but I will do my best. One of the issues with housing in Matthews is that we have relied on suburban growth, which means large lots. And we love our yards, we love gardening, but it's not providing housing and it's not providing competitive pricing that more people can move in. Suburbs were built on white flight from urban centers, and we have to deal with that. Okay, well, I think I've touched on the major points that are in my mind and in my heart, so I will let Ken go.
Well, I first want to start off is if you want to be able to live in Matthews, you absolutely should, no matter how much money you make. One of the prides of the things that I've done in my first 2 terms is, along with Pastor Larry Whitley, we spearheaded $1.5 million in American Rescue Plan funding for affordable housing, of which of that we spent $500,000 just last night to help give to Habitat for Humanity to help people in Matthews be able to live in Matthews. Our police, our fire, our nurses, our teachers should be able to live in the place that they serve. The single mother who's working 2 jobs should be able to live in Matthews. Anyone who wants to call this place home, which a lot of people do because it's an amazing place, should be able to, and we're taking serious steps towards that. Thank you.
You know, when I was growing up, I recall a revaluation process that we had in Charlotte, and I remember my father saying, if the town thinks my house is worth this much, they can have it. Can they come buy it? I remember saying that, Dad. We just had a reevaluation, and the price of housing is very expensive. I'm not sure I could afford to buy the house that I live in right now. I bought it 20-something years ago. I don't know that I could afford to buy it now for what the tax value is. So it's something that we're cognizant of, and we are asking every developer that comes to town now to include some workforce housing, so our teachers and our mechanics and people like that have a place to live, and they're starting to come around, and we're getting a few units. We're getting 10 units here and 15 units there and a few houses here. We're also, and I will say for my time with Commissioner Urban, he's kind of evolved my thoughts on, you know, I used to be, yeah, let's have a lot of single family houses, you know, like what I grew up in. And that's not the way we need to do it. We need to be building quadruplexes and things that are less expensive, that look nice, but are more affordable. So thank you for that, Commissioner Urban. You have brought that to the forefront some. So in the right place, we can do that. Thank you.
I forgot to mention earlier that I had the privilege of serving on the planning board with Pastor Whitley, and that was a real honor. But while we were on that, we set up a committee to study housing and affordable housing. On I believe it was January of 2019, we submitted that report to the town, and it laid out all the parameters on what needs to be done to put people into affordable housing. It's just something that we need to work on. Like the mayor mentioned, I think every time someone comes into the town and wants to put a building up, they need to be asked to put some affordable housing into that building.
Okay, I'm going to take this opportunity to plug a couple of really good foundations. One of them is Home Again Foundation. They help house the homeless. They've been in operation for a few years now, and they build small homes, small houses, tiny houses that are actually affordable, and they own them. Okay. Another one is Healing Vine Harbor. Healing Vine Harbor reaches out, and they help women who are on the verge of losing the home that they have, and they help them with meeting their monthly bills, as well as enriching them with knowledge to stay in their homes. I think that there's a way that we need to find that the town can work with private organizations like this to help reach out to the people who need the help. There's a lot of grants out there. Grants take a long time to show up. Healing Vine Harbor and Home Again Foundation, we could meet up with them at the drop of a hat. So, thank you.
All of those ideas are wonderful that I've heard so far in trying to identify affordable housing. But if we don't deal with the consistent increase of taxation in Mecklenburg County, in Crestdale community itself, some homes, they inflated the value of those homes, almost 80% increase some homes in Crestdale. The average Matthew's home value increased by 34% in your taxation. That's huge. We've got to be dealing with taxation. That's something government can do and should do. I don't know if the full role of and the capability of this council, this commission, but we as a group should be putting pressure on Mecklenburg County to stop inflating. See, they didn't raise the percentage, they just raised the value of your home, which caused a great increase. All of us in Mecklenburg County, and certainly in Matthews, will pay more in taxes this next term. And so we've got to deal with taxation as well, and that's something elected officials can and should deal with.
I moved to this town back in 2003, I think it was, and I purchased a house, $103,500. The current valuation is somewhere north of $330,000. My wages never stayed the same with that. Now that house I had as a rental, when I first rented it, I rented it for, I think it was $850 a month. House just down the street, $2,100 today, just rented about a month ago. So this is starter homes. The house was 1,222 square feet. One of the ways to keep people in their houses before they become a problem, where you need to get them HUD housing and stuff like that, is to keep them a house, is not have incredibly high increases in the taxes. The house I live into, which is right next to this one, just so you know, my tax bill went up 48%. 48%. That's the highest. I checked with someone that's been in town for 50 years. He said it's the highest tax increase the town has had. Okay. So this is a big issue, I believe. Keep people in their houses. Some of the issues with zoning, and I don't have a lot of time here to talk about it, but there's some creative ways to look at things. Let's say you got a detached garage. You convert that, someone's renting it, you can get $1,000 a month, and someone that's 68 years old that happens to be widowed, they now have the money to pay their tax bill and their insurance and their utilities in their house, and they stay in their house. That's one of the things I want to look at too when I get on the board, hopefully, if you allow me, is some creative solutions like that. Thank you.
Every time that I'm talking here now, I think that you guys are waiting to see what I'm going to say different than everybody else. So I'm going to go ahead and do it again. Even if I'm not a salesperson, even if I don't work in insurance, the housing problem is the 3 P's: price, and price. You have to be straightforward on the solutions on that. And talking about that and about tax reviews, I don't know about you guys, but I'm fighting for my taxes in my house. Meaning, I went to the informal procedure, sent some emails and some comps, they call it, comparison with other houses in my house. They said, no, we're going to keep your taxes on $445,000. Based on that, I bought the house for $185,000. And now I'm the second phase. I went to a meeting with 5 people, a lawyer, and everything else. And when I was leaving, okay, thank you so much for listening to that, and this is democracy. I like that. The guy from the Mecklenburg lawyer from the Mecklenburg County came to me and said, hey, Mr. Sadowski, I want to talk to you. Give me your phone number and everything else. So there is a negotiation in the works, I guess, and I'm still waiting. So thank you for helping me with my slogan for the campaign. read my lips. No new taxes. Thank you.
I provide affordable housing already. My first career I was a chef. My second career I was middle management at Family Dollar. My third career I'm a landlord. I bought little mill homes, and I am providing multiple two-bedroom homes for $900 to $1,000 a month. Compare that to anyone else's rent, okay? I am providing multiple homes, as many as 6, okay? Two-bedroom properties for $900 to $1,000 a month, full stop. The last thing you want to hear is the government is here to help, okay? You've heard that before if you're over 40. There's some sacrifice considered with affordable housing. And I've heard both sides of the argument from my prior boards. I haven't heard anything in the last 2 years. But you have to, number one, welcome a certain amount of density. Number two, you can't demand granite countertops and full brick. Press? 50% brick, all that kind of thing, okay? Okay. And you need to settle for hardy plank or vinyl siding on affordable housing. They have to cut costs, so it's either density or product. Condos, townhomes, and mill houses, not a tiny home, but a mill house is the way to go about it, in my opinion. But I provide that already. Thank you.
For me, affordable housing means home ownership, not affordable rent for 10 years, because after 10 years, you're out, and that's what we're currently getting from developers. For me, I think the developers need to be held accountable. There is nothing in our UDO for an affordable housing policy, so I would like to see this board or the future board come up with an affordable housing policy, put in the UDO that will hold developers accountable to develop actual affordable housing. They say they can't do it. I think there's a way that they can if you just get your brain to thinking, because, you know, we want to be honest here. It's all about the money for developers. But, you know, we really want affordable housing in this town. I think we can get it, and we need to hold the developers accountable. Also, I would hope that, and I would think that the town staff, there is an $85 million grant program through HUD for affordable housing. I think this town staff also should look into that and apply to get and see if we can get any grants from that.
When I made the motion last night to give the $500,000 to Habitat for Humanity, and it was unanimously approved by the board, it was only after a major contentious debate with the representative from Habitat for Humanity that $500,000 was not just to be spent on homes, but on the catchword at the time was plethora of activities within the affordable housing spectrum. Now, the reason why is the last house that was built by Habitat for Humanity was $350,000 it cost to build that house. Now, the reason you can't take $500,000 and just build one home. Now, the reason why they're able to do that is because they have their own mortgaging system, and they have the 0% mortgage, and it makes the house affordable. So there's more to this equation. It may be a very expensive home, but we have to find out ways to finance the home in a way that makes it affordable. There's nothing we can do about the increase in inflation and interest, but we can do something about how it gets paid. Thank you.
Yes, you can talk about giving money to Habitat for Humanity and going out to getting grants, et cetera, but if you keep voting down projects that deliver duplexes and triplexes and apartments and for sale townhomes and cottages for seniors, we're not going anywhere. So there's some platitudes going on. If you want to talk affordable housings, talk to me. That's my business. I deal with it. I'm building projects in Rock Hill and Kansas City right now. The problem is no one wants to make the hard choices. I only want my single family home. So a petition comes in and we're offering up smaller cottage type homes. I don't want that in my backyard. I'm sorry, we have the NIMBY attitude. We need the YIMBY attitude. Yes, in my backyard. We're missing the middle in this society. We're missing the housing middle in this town. And that's very important we need to hope for. From the standpoint of no new taxes, I keep hearing that. Let's hit it. Do you rather have 74 police officers out on duty tonight or 54? Without the new police budget, you would have had 54 officers out there tonight. I think 74 is more appropriate. Would you rather have a response time of over 10 minutes for our fire department or a response time under 7 minutes? Without the taxes that were just increased, you would not have had fire station number 3 coming on board. So you got to think about these things really hard. And it's very easy to say, when you're new and upcoming, do this and do that. It's a tough role to make, and there's some hard choices to make, and I know you don't like some of them that I make and some of the other board members make, but sometimes you have to do it in order to maintain the quality of life in this community. There has to be some hard choices, and I think this board's done a good job in making those choices. Thank you.
To everyone, now we're going to take questions. If you all would please head to the podium there. We're prepared to take questions from the audience, an opportunity for you to, we've got a full group here. I know you have questions. You've been patient enough to wait, so we'd love to hear from you now.
So I just have a question for Dr. Threet. The first thing I did as I was watching everybody file was Google. And what came up is a C-SPAN link from 2016 where you spoke at an Elect Trump rally. And you talk about character and you talk about racism. What's up with that? And do you have regrets?
No, I don't. I still think that character is the central part of who we are. I go, everywhere I go, I bring all that I am. My values are grounded, and I think the policies that we had experienced under Mr. Trump did a tremendous amount of good. The unemployment numbers for minorities was bottomed out. The HBUs got funded. Just so many good policies, and so I think those things stand. In fact, if you want to know where I stand on so many issues, you can go to our website and you can see I have a whole array of messages and teachings, and some of them directly toward matters like that. And character is central, and I stand on mine, and I hope others will stand on theirs. And he's made some decisions, and that's part of his decision making, but I stand by my character, and I think my walk, my life, my family, my public service has spoken well for itself. So thank you. Hopefully I answered the question. Well, again, I stood and do stand behind Mr. Trump based on his public policy issues, where he stands on a number of issues. And I don't know him personally. I have had a chance to meet with him and talk with him, and what I saw was a man with real intent to make America unique and restore so many things. I think that's good, and I think we need some of the things that we've seen and heard from him, and I think we still need. Well, again, I don't know if he's lied, but I purpose not to be one to pursue, and falsehood and things like that. But that certainly is my commitment. I'm not running as the president. I'm running to serve here in Matthews as a board of commissioner. And I think my integrity, my history, my stands for itself. And if I can add to a little point, we talked a little about police. I had the great privilege of serving in law enforcement, and there are some good police officers, and there are some challenged police officers. And I had the great opportunity to be one of the first community police officers in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, and it was about building trust and relationship. And I think we did a great job in doing just that, building relationship through community policing. And that character and that testimony stands unquestionable.
I'm not afraid to speak up about the tax increase, and I heard what you said, Mr. Urban, but I'm looking at a bill that's Matthews taxes, 37% increase over last year. My taxes were up the prior year and the year before that. I have been in Matthews for 17 years. I see one trend. We're not going in the right direction, okay? This couldn't be a worse time. And I'm not blaming one person, but the board has to think about the taxpayers. How much more increase can we sustain? I mean, is there a limit here? I mean, do we even think about fiscal responsibility? Do you really think it's fair?
I'd like to address that. First, I'd like to say that everybody on our board lives here in Matthews, and I don't want to pay a lot of taxes just like you don't. I certainly don't. I want the taxes to be as low as possible. And when we debated our tax increase, and it was significant, but when we debated it, I asked people, what do you want to cut? Do you want to have fewer police officers? Do you not want to build a fire station? Do you not want to pave our roads? People here expect a certain quality of life, and we went through this budget line by line, and what do we want to cut? What would you suggest we cut to lower taxes? I mean, do we not want to be safe? Do we not want to pave our roads? Do we not want sidewalks built? I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I would like to say that we did this increase, and it was significant, it was painful. I received 3 letters from taxpayers complaining about the tax increase out of 33,000 people that live here. That's 0.009%. Less than 1 person out of every 10,000 complained about the tax increase. Now, they didn't come up and hug me at the grocery store and say, thank you for delivering this huge tax increase, but they said, we understand why it's necessary. And my question to anybody that says it's not, then my question is, what would you cut? What can we cut the budget on that would be palatable? People expect a certain quality of life here.
I'd like to have a rebuttal.
Sure.
I'm seeing rezoning, high density, lots and lots of apartments, lots of development. I'm looking at the situation, I'm like, well, the money must be flowing into the coffers of the town of Matthews. This development is happening in the town of Matthews. My question is this approval for increased development for residential? Is this actually the reason, and has anybody really looked at it?
We have
Is
looked at
the
it.
expense of having all this development actually hurting the taxpayers?
No, it is not.
And leading to those increases?
No, it does not. It actually, this organic growth helps us lower our tax rate. If we didn't have all those other people contributing to our tax base, we would have to raise taxes even more.
I'd like to see something more concrete, and
Okay,
I
fair enough,
respect
fair enough.
your view, but I would, as
And I
a
respect you as
taxpayer,
well.
I want to see, and I do plan to send a letter to every one of you, and I do apologize, including the candidates, about how I feel about the situation in the town of Matthews regarding taxes. And I do apologize for my delay. I have been in a form of sticker shock since I opened the bill. And I do plan to write you, so don't consider delay as not interest. If somebody else wants to speak, I want to leave the podium. Thank you.
Yeah, again, I'll just end with saying that we don't like tax increases either. And we looked really hard to cut taxes further. And I'm open to suggestions. If somebody wants to know what we can cut, if we don't want to do sidewalk, if it, our paving contracts have gone up like 200%. We want to pave the roads, sidewalks, some of our sidewalks cost $1 million a mile to build. million a mile, and our budget for the entire town is about $34 million. So I hate tax increases. Everybody in our board hates tax increases. It's not something that we relish and want to punish the citizens. We pay them as well. So I don't know if anybody else wants to address it.
I'll touch a little bit on the tax increase. I am also suffering. When we were having our tax or our budget discussion, I was looking at the numbers literally by how many extra hours I would have to take because I work at night. And I could look at the numbers and figure out, as we raised our tax increase, how many nights I would not be at home to tuck my kids into bed because I was working. I wasn't comfortable with it, but I also could look at the numbers and realize that we have $2 million needed annually for paving roads. We didn't do that with this budget. We increased it to $500,000 from, I think, $250,000. We're not touching anywhere close to what we need to be doing to keep our roads paved, just for town roads, not for state roads. We're looking at a $650,000 study on Old Matthews infrastructure for stormwater services. That's just the study. What these new developments are doing, when you can run one set of infrastructure of stormwater along the roads to several homes, is it increases the value of that infrastructure. Instead of running stormwater to one house, you're running it to multiple. And those, as development comes in, it is paying for upgrading the old infrastructure from the 20s, from the 40s, from the 60s, when Matthews was first developed.
Okay. I'm not naive just because I'm a newbie or a new candidate here. I have a company before for more than 500 employees in South America. You can check and Google that, no problem. Right now, I'm working as a consultant with Microsoft, so it's a tough job that I'm doing. And I'm saying this because when I say read my lips, no new taxes, doesn't mean that we have to cut. This is very easy to say. And Mayor, I like you. I'm going to support you always because we have some life before when I help you and all of that. But there are ways of managing money. You follow the money, and the money, and you negotiate. And I noticed that here in America, people don't like to bargain. I know that we bargain. I know that we have teams, we have professionals and everything else that do that in and out. But we need to bargain more and more. We are not in a situation where we are floating on money. We came from COVID-19, and I'm being serious now for the first time, I guess, in my whole speech here, because when it comes to taxes and when it comes to money, I change the way that I'm thinking. So more doesn't mean better. More police officers. Of course, I want a police officer in front of my house. But we can work better, do not work harder. So maybe there is a lot of managing to be done. Maybe there is a lot of resource management to be done. So we can work with less money and more services. I'm all about quality of life, but there is always one thing that people forget. We think with this guy, pocket, and the pocketbook right here. So that means that we shouldn't expect everybody to have the same kind of resources to have a wonderful life here in Lieutenant Matthews. I'm finishing soon. So I'm keep telling you that we can work and have a wonderful town with less taxes. So read my lips. No new taxes.
As someone that has worked in the world of accounting and budget, the level of the tax increase we did, the vote was 5-2. If you want your taxes in 3 to 5 years with the next valuation to go up another 40%, bluntly, vote the incumbents in. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll tell you how we can maintain our same service and not increase taxes. And the answer is simple, but it's not a good answer. There is an entire quadrant of Matthews that doesn't have adequate fire service. I mean, you'll get a fire truck to your house in time. You'll get an ambulance there in time. But it's not the same level of service that you would expect. We don't build a new fire station, and that's how you keep the taxes the same. That means that an entire quadrant of Matthews suffers so that we don't increase taxes.
Keep to the time limits, because this is what it's about. It's about these guys here. And it's so important that they're able to ask their questions. So if you could get with them individually, if you want to weigh in. As you see, we've got a large group, and we were scheduled to finish at about 9, which we are probably a little beyond that. I've got the time, but I don't know if others do. So here's what we're going to do next. Pastor is getting ready. Pastor Whitley has a question, and then we're going to ask each of you to do a 30-second closing statement. Pastor Mabry is going to do the closeout, and then once we're complete with that, you all will have an opportunity then to get with each other one-on-one. But I was told it was going to be a lot of conversation, and we're grateful for that. But just keep in mind, if you can, when it comes to these time limits, we always want to get to the people who are in attendance so that they can ask their questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I won't be long. As you well know, I'm coming off the board, but for the last 8 years, my role on the board was to make sure that equality was for everyone. I want to thank the present commissioners there. I have a question now. There was a couple things that were said, and I want to make corrections. I think when you say something, you ought to make sure you got it right. Kim McCool made a statement which was right. When we first came on, there was only one person of color that made over $70,000 a year. I'm proud and to say that this board has effectively made sure that that has come up. We now have over 5 people of color that is making over $80,000 a year. Also, the second highest position in the town of Matthews is held by a female of color, and we are proud to have that as well under Miss Becky Hall. So that's a round of applause. And I want to show you that things does work when you continue to stay focused. Also, the second person on our HR is a female person of color, and I'm glad to see that as well also. So I want to commend you and let you know that this board. My question as I come off the board, I'm a retired police officer, state trooper for over 30 years. I have worked, thank you so much. I worked really hard to make sure that people of color in the police department, female, and the fire department treated equally and have the same rank as the white counterpart. In the last 8 years, we've only had 2 people of color to make sergeant on the police department. We only have 1 person of color, male, and 1 Hispanic on the fire department. My question to the present board and those who are seeking to elect, if you are elected, will you pledge to make sure that you stay on top and make sure that the police department gets higher than a sergeant, a lieutenant, and fill some of these positions and make sure that we have equality as police officers and as firefighters in Fire Station 3, which is in the northern part. That's something I push for so that we have color. You don't have to all answer. All you need to do, if you pledge to make sure that you will pledge that if you are elected, just raise your hand. Thank you so very much. Come on, Pastor Luke, if you would. Closing statement, yes. Whichever way you want to start.
Let's start with Mr. Miller. We'll go to the opposite end, and if you would please do a closing statement, and then we'll do the closeout with Pastor Mabry. And thank you all so much. You've been wonderful sitting and waiting and giving your attention. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you very much for having me again. Sorry I was a bit tardy. I would remind Reverend Whitley that the board of commissioners, including the mayor, only are in charge of 2 people, the town manager and the town attorney. Human resources hires with the guidance of the town manager and the town attorney. You've already admitted there's good representation in HR and upper management in people of color, but we have little to no influence in that, okay? I just want to mention that as a flat-out straight statement. Again, I'm going to repeat myself. I've served under 4 mayors, Mayor Myers, Taylor, Bailey, and Higdon. I'm a team player. Again, it's amazing what a team can accomplish when you don't care who gets the credit. I will do, if elected, I will do the best I can to keep the town of Matthews as great as it already is, if not better. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time to be listening to a person that has a different point of view about the world, that map over there representing the world. Thank you for being patient to try to understand my English. Thank you for being also very thankful to understand that all roads come to Rome. What that means? It means that you have different ways of solving issues with the same amount of money that you already have, or being creative. And to answer this gentleman, amazing math. Math is math, it's not politics. 1 plus 2 is 1 plus 1 is 2. So, if you have 15% deficits, come to your suppliers and said, I want a 15% discount, otherwise there's no conversation. And you keep going and find the right person. So, read my lips. No new taxes. Thank you so much.
first thank Mr. Whitley for putting this event on, for everybody to meet the candidates, to meet everybody. I think this is important. This is community. This is literally it. I am running for office. The positives for me is I was on the council in the past. I can hit the road running on day one. I've also attended meetings even though I've not been on the council for years. And I've read the agenda and certain things I'll speak about. I definitely want to talk to you after the meeting because you made some very valid points. Very, very fast. Police department, a long time ago, had a lot of overtime, and I asked the police chief in a budget hearing, what's going on? Are you short officers? Do we need to hire some? Or is there a problem? By the way, your retirement as a police officer is the highest overtime and wages in the last 2 years. So are they playing games? I wanted to find out. You hire me, I'm going to dig into those numbers. I'm not going to rubber stamp what the general manager tells the staff and elected officials. The buck stops with us on the town council, and that's the person I'm going to be. And I want to listen to everybody. You send me an email, I'm going to send an email back to you. Thank you. Consider me on November.
I started out talking about leadership, and I believe many of the solutions and questions and concerns we've mentioned tonight can be resolved and find answers through good, strong leadership. There are answers. Every problem has a solution. Good leadership helps find that. Consider Leon Threet for commissioner here in Matthews. I'm committed, and I know we can find answers for our community. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight. I really appreciate the opportunity to address all of you. I want you to pay a visit to my website. It's got links to my email address as well as my social media, votedavidg.com. Take a look at it. Send me an email. Stay in communication. What I want to be able to bring to the town of Matthews, to the citizens of Matthews. If you want parks, this is what it's going to cost. Is it worth it to you? If you want sidewalks, this is what it's going to cost. Is it worth it to you? And so that's the kind of interaction I want with people. Is I want to be able to have a open, transparent way of doing business in Matthews. So that's going to require communication. It's going to require dedication from not just the board but from the people. A lot of folks don't show up to the meetings. You will have an outsized voice if you just show up once in a while and address the board. Let them know what you want. Let me know what you want, and I'll represent you.
Getting back to the minority hires, I believe that there was just a sizable increase in pay for our police and fire. Hopefully that will bring more applicants in and more minority applications and give us a broader field to choose from. I would appreciate your vote in November so I can move and take my next step from planning board up to commissioner. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight. You know, when I first got elected 10 years ago, our former town manager, Hazen Blodgett, took me around the offices at Town Hall, and we went into the tax office, and there was a lady that worked in the tax office then who's now retired, and she was dealing with an elderly farmer that had come to pay his taxes. And he was kind of complaining about the taxes a little bit. You know, these taxes. Hello? Okay, there we go. And she said, well, Matthews is a really great town. We have a lot of amenities here, and you should be happy to pay these taxes. You should pay them with a smile. And he said, good, because I thought you were going to require cash. So I say all this to say that it is my pledge and promise to you to keep your taxes absolutely no higher than they need to be to run our great town to the level that you expect. And if you disagree with me, my door is always open. If there's a program or something that you say, hey, this is, to coin one of our favorite phrases, if this juice is not worth the squeeze, let me know. We'll cut it out of the budget. But When I only get 3 letters from the entire town complaining, I think people are pretty happy with what we're doing, and we're not wasting your money, trust me. We are trying to be very conservative, all of us. So thank you very much.
Firstly, I want to thank all of you for being involved in our election process. A lot of times we have forums and not a lot of people show up, so thank you for being involved and being informed voters. Second, I want to thank Larry Whitley for letting us use his beautiful church tonight, and Ms. Rivens for moderating. He kept us in line pretty well. I want to close by saying I love Matthews. It's a great place. We're doing really, really good things. If you go downtown Matthews, it's bustling. Things are going well. People are happy. There are some struggles. Leadership takes making the hard decisions. And I will continue making the hard decisions for what's best for the town, not what's best for just an individual. I really appreciate it. The last 2 terms have been amazing. I hope you vote for me in November. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. My phone number is public, and visit votekenmccool.com. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming out tonight. I neglected to thank Pastor Chuck, Pastor Luke, and Pastor Whitley earlier, and Larry, it's been a pleasure to serve with you. I'm a candidate who enjoys learning. I enjoy research, I enjoy data, and I enjoy finding solutions to difficult problems. As I run for my 3rd term, I hope you'll vote for me, and I will continue to do that for the town of Matthews.
Chuck, Larry, Luke, thank you very much. Tanya, thank you very much. Thank you all for attending tonight. Been around for a long time. Like your vote again. You know, you got to make hard choices. And Ken said hard choices, I think, from that side. So that's what it's about. It's about grinding away at it, looking at all the issues. It's not about one neighborhood or one particular person. It's 34,000 different individuals in this town. And one thing I have learned over all these years, just one big aspect of it, sometimes people get on the board and we're really, really polar opposites. But when you talk about being the M party, that's the Matthews party, you begin to find commonalities and working together. So I must say that we sit on the opposite ends of the dais, Renee and I, but we probably vote more in common together in the last 2 years than we have in many, many years. It's because although she comes from a different direction than I do, we work for the common good of Matthews. And so that's what I'm asking you to do. If you want to work for the common good of Matthews, you love the way it's been going, you know that 10 years ago, you could have fired a cannonball down the middle of the street at 5 o'clock on Friday. Now you'd hit all sorts of families and people and revelers and restaurant goers, et cetera. So if you like the way it's going, please vote for me again, John Urban.
It was an honor and a privilege to be here tonight, and thank everyone involved to put this on. And I really would like to have your support and your vote in November, but there's something more important than either one of those. And especially all of you that are of faith and all of you that are not, we need your prayers and your thoughts to make sure that we have the wisdom and the integrity and the dignity to carry on the job that we need to do. So no matter who's elected here, who you support, pray for all of us, because we definitely need it. This country needs it, and this town needs it. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out tonight and taking time out of your busy schedules, I'm sure, to be here. I'd like to thank Pastor Whitley and Ms. Rivens, if I'm pronouncing right, okay, for this, and Luke, and he disappeared on us, but he's gone, him as well. As I said, I'm serving my 1st term, and it's been an interesting 1st term, and I have learned a lot, and I have enjoyed every minute of it. I have been honored to have served you, and I understand as a public servant, it is my job to serve the public. So I hope that you do